About 12 million Nigerians will be eligible to vote for the first time in the general elections next month. That's the number just added to the voters' register. The country has seen an increase in voter registration from 84 million in 2019 to 93 million in 2023. Arise correspondent Chinaza Samuel reports on the major changes to the voters' register.
There appears to be growth in the political participation in Nigeria. However, while many states will play a major role in who gets the highest vote, some will not be as critical depending on the voters' population. Lagos, in Southwest, is still leading with the highest number of registered voters with over 7 million in 2023. It's an increase of about 500,000 to the 2019 figure of 6.5 million. Kano maintains its second position, recording an increase from 5.4 million registered voters in 2019 to 5.9 million registered voters in 2023. Kaduna also has an increase from 3.9 million voters in 2019 to 4.3 million now, making it the third state with the highest number of registered voters. On the flip side, Ekiti State continues to record the lowest number of voters. Nevertheless, it now has over 987,000 registered voters, about 80,000 more than the 2019 figure of 909,000. Bayelsa State, which had 923,000 voters in 2019, now has over 1 million voters. The Federal Capital Territory recorded an increase from the 1.3 million in 2019 to this year's 1.5 million voters. Its third list position in 2019 now goes to Yobe State with 1.4 million voters from the previous 1.3 million. In terms of gender, male voters are still taking the lead from 44 million in 2019 to 49 million in 2023, amounting to 52.5% of the voters' population. Female voters went from 39.5 million in 2019 to 44 million. By age distribution, there is a reduction in the number of young voters. In 2019, young voters between ages of 18 and 34 were 43 million, but in 2023, it dropped to 37 million, making just 39% of the register. In 2019, middle-aged voters between ages 36 to 50 were 25 million, but in 2023, the figure rose to 33 million. By zones, the Northwest has gone from 20 million in 2019 to 22 million in 2023, Southwest from 16 million to 17, North Central from 13 million to 15 million, South-South from 12 million to 14 million, and Northeast from 11 million to 12.5 million, while the Southeast from 10 million to 10.9 million, making it the lowest zone with registered voters. Chinaza Samuel, Arise News.
Thank you for that breakdown, Chinaza. Well, joining us now as a convener of the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room, NLB, as well as the RISE Director of News and Politics Editor, Somna Sambo. Thank you both for being on the news tonight. Let me begin with you, Ene. I mean, if you look at the reports, yes, 12 million new voters for the first time. So there's an increase. Any surprises for you? Because looking at Chinaza's report, the young people declined. I wonder if that's a cause for concern.
I think there's so many reasons why you will see a decline here and there, and you see the variation of more men, more male voters, or registered to vote, and female. These are subjects for social scientists to dig into, because you cannot definitely look at that because of the surge that we saw in terms of registration. We must also remember that many people registered online and could not complete their registration, and they are in their millions. And so who was caught within that average or within that circle, one cannot really say. So I don't think there are major surprises. But to look at the number of women being lower is a source of concern for me. And I think that is one area that we need to look at, because you cannot pinpoint the reasons why. Is it that women are getting disenchanted? What are the core reasons why we have lower numbers? Because in the past, they have always been, very, very high numbers. So what has resulted into this, I think, is a subject for study.
Yes, indeed, it's a subject for continuous political study. But let's go to our offsite studio where Arise News political editor is there. Samna, I want to ask you: can you put a finger to some of the factors that must have, led to the increase, more than 30 or 40 or 30% or so increase of new voters added to the voter register? 12 million, quite astronomical, right?
Thank you so much, Christian. Well, there's a lot of interest in the election that's forthcoming. With just less than 7 weeks to go, you can see that the enthusiasm is in the air, and this has been a build-up, actually. A lot of Nigerians are interested in this election because you don't have a strong incumbent that will actually make people to conclude that he or she may just, by the factors we've always known in Nigerian politics, just muzzle their way through. So this is the second time that we're having in this Fourth Republic a transition from the completion of a two-term by an incumbent, and then with the chance being made open for anyone to emerge as president. The first time was in 2007, when then the outgoing president, Olusegun Obasanjo, had completed 2 terms. And so the gateway was open for anyone to emerge. And in 2015, we also saw an opportunity again where, it was very, very clear to everyone that, look, although the opposition had snatched power from former President Goodluck Jonathan, it was clear that if President Muhammadu Buhari is allowed to do 8 years, then it will mean that anybody else can emerge as president. And so this is the second time, actually, that we're having an opportunity where the coast will become clear for everyone. So that's why you see the surge. A lot of people know that since we don't have a strong man that will muzzle anyone around as an incumbent, it gives the room for clarity of purpose among voters. People are interested, especially with the emergence of 4 top candidates, and it gives an opportunity for people to know that if they're able to support their candidates very well, the candidate may emerge, unlike before where you have 2 major contenders and 2 top political parties. Now you have 4 parties. So the choices have increased, and then the trust in INEC has increased. The Electoral Act has made it much more easier for people to believe that we can have free, fair, credible, and inclusive elections.
Yeah, when you listen to that factor, does an increase in registered voters then translate to more people showing up on the election day, do you think?
I think it's most likely. When you talk about the factors leading to more people being interested, in going to register, during the continuous voter registration, we had issues, and it was in that, within that window that we had the primaries, for example, where we saw a lot of money bags exchanging, the kind of fraudulent election that nobody was arrested for, because we could feel it, we could hear it, we could smell it, but nobody was arrested. I think the young people were quite mobilized. If you remember, there was a kind of storm in the social media to say, hey, our destiny is in our hands. If you don't participate now, then it's going to really be something. Before the closing, INEC had to extend the time, because then people just realize, hey, we are waking up. And then the coming of the beavers, just like the other colleague mentioned, that the trust deficit that was there, people felt their votes never count, and now they know that the votes will count because of the beavers and because of the Electoral Act 2022. And so people are beginning to believe again. They now saw from the off-cycle election that votes will count. Yeah. And so everybody is interested. We are very happy with the turnout of people in different environments, for the collection of the PVCs. But we are also calling on INEC, because there are long queues. I heard what, Festus
Okoye.
Festus, mentioned. It's important for us to look at. I think there should be a situation room for the collection of PVC, so that there are hotlines, so that people can tell you what is happening in one place or the other. I think is as important as the voting, period itself. So it will be nice if they can have a situation room where they have, they are taking reports. So we have been giving feedbacks to INEC from across the country, but we are happy that at least there is an extension now.
Yes, indeed. I mean, that 12 million new voters have been added to the register. But Samna, I don't know if you agree that the interest is not, or being matched with action here. When you look at a population estimated at over 200 million and only just about 93 point something million are registered voters here. Don't we need more sensitization why voting is a responsibility that should be adhered to by the citizens?
Well, Christian, we would have had more than 100 million registered voters if not for certain factors that happened. Even within, before I go into that, within the context of the elections we've had previously, I mean, if you look at 2019, we had 84 million registered voters, and now we are having 93 million. Yes, it has shown that, look, there's trust in the electoral body and then within the electoral system itself. But it would have been more than 100 million, for example, if we had seen these two political parties that are trying to measure up with the two bigger political parties we've always had. That's the PDP and the APC. So if there was clarity of purpose, as at last year, that a Peter Obi will move, for example, to the Labour Party, if he had moved over a year ago, and then a Kwankwaso too had moved into the NMPP over a year ago, clearly with like about a year to a year and a half before this period, I can tell you that the enthusiasm that we're getting now would have made us to actually shoot beyond 100 million. But a lot of people were not very clear. And if you see with the way things were happening and the government itself wasn't so clear about the Electoral Act, you remember that there was this fiasco between the National Assembly and the Electoral Act on the use of electronic technologies, and especially the electronic transmission of election results on election day. So people were waiting to read the body language of President Muhammadu Buhari to see if indeed he will commit himself to signing a new Electoral Act and giving Nigerians a new electoral law that will help to drive the process. And we thank God that after a lot of resilience by Nigerians, the presidency was forced to commit to a clean, clear electoral process, and of course that Electoral Act was signed. That now gave people confidence to go out there and of course try to get their PVCs for those who hadn't collected, and for those who had not registered at all, to want to register. And of course, immediately after the primaries, and Peter Obi had later had to move to Labour Party, Kwankwaso had to move, and then you had some other fringe candidates emerging here and there. It gave people the reason to now want to say, look, there can be a sort of independent candidate away from the two major parties that could likely stand a chance. And so as it stands right now, it's something that we will continue to drive at, and that's why the Nigeria's civil society situation room has been very helpful in creating an atmosphere that has been helpful to INEC itself and has driven the process and has allowed people to see that if the civil society actors can back INEC away from the politicians who don't want a credible electoral system, then something good can come out of it. So my thinking is that by the time we're having the 2027 elections, we may have like 120 million or even 125 million.
And essence, agreement with you, something I see her nodding her head a lot, but and let me just ask you as well. Logistics, INEC preparedness. I know you have been monitoring elections and the build up to this forthcoming election. 12 million new voters. What does that mean for INEC? Because we've seen in previous elections the challenges of logistics and distribution and all of that. If you had a crystal ball, despite the technology we are introducing to this election for the first time used on large scale, if you had a crystal ball to look into, where do you foresee the challenges coming with these 12 new voters, and what INEC and other stakeholders should be doing to prevent or nip them in the bud?
I think INEC did certain things, before, immediately when they were concluding the continuous voter registration. There were introductions of new polling units, thousands of them, to make sure that they can decentralize, to make sure that they can decongest. When we had some of the obstacle elections, we saw some of the polling units that were not populated, but now they are fully populated. During the continuous voter registration, they also allow people who have moved, to different locations to relocate themselves, and they were able to assess that. So I don't think it's too much. It's going to be of any difference how many people are coming on board. I think the difference is for them to know they have the data. I think technology has played a very good role. It allocates, it knows the number of people who are in each of the polling units, and so that brings more. But what they are confronted with is printing more ballot papers than what we had. And I agree with the last speaker that when we have 2027, it's going to be a big election. And so this is further deepening democracy in Nigeria. And I think this is a chance. Nigerians are getting more excited. If we allow votes to count, more Nigerians will be more interested. And I know a lot of people who were not registered, who wanted to register, but because of the cumbersome nature of the registration process, or maybe they were still thinking and it became too late for so many who wanted to be there but are not able to. But I think this is generating a lot of interest, and the trust issue is being built.
Yeah. Okay, Ene, let's ask you to look at the demographic distribution of the registration. Students are topping the list, and of course, the youth burge, like we talk, seems to be gathering that momentum. We have 26.02 million. And you have farmers. Farmers is at 14.71 million. Business class, 12.15 million. Traders, itinerary traders, both market women and market men, 7.97 million. Artisans, just 1.9 million. And of course, housewives, 13 million. If we look at the demographic distribution, do you see, a kind of wave that this would affect the outcome of the elections?
I think one area that has been a source of concern for us is the population of students. Many of the students registered, and if you remember, ASU was on strike for a very long time. The continuous voter registration was done during ASU strike. And so what is going to happen now that students have gone back to school? What's going to happen if they are not, if some of them are not back? What's going to happen? And they're in their millions. And if you look at the context of Nigeria, where more than 133 million Nigerians confirmed as at February this year, are below the poverty line. How many parents, because majority of these schools are public schools, majority of the parents are living from hand to mouth. And so how many of them will be able to return to cast their votes? I think that's where we see a major, is an issue, is a cause for concern. I think others, excitement, people want to vote, because they feel this process will make a difference. This election is providing alternatives. If you don't want to vote for this person, you want to vote for this. There are so many parties that have come on board. And so I'm not so worried about the demography. We are looking at issues of unemployment as well. This election is about the future of Nigerians, and I think we have a date with history.
Absolutely, because everybody really has a stake there. Let's quickly go to the offsite studio again and bring in Sambo. Samna, what are your thoughts here? Who do you think, demographically holds the ace or the aces? Look at the farmers. These are the rural people, you want to say. 14.7 million. Business people, the business class, as they say, 12.15 million. You find some people complain that you find a lot of them being nonchalant. But this time around, do you think they will be? So what group do you think hold the ace in the 2023 presidential elections?
Well, Christian, let's start with the demographic distribution that you've talked about. I would like to start, first of all, from the figures we've given about young people. And let's be very clear here. If you look at the median age, those between 35 and above, and then you look at the distribution between those between 18 and 34. It looks like with those 18 and 34, from what INEC has told us here, they seem to be lower. But you see that from 35 and above, they've moved up. So what happens is that between 2019 and now, a lot of people have moved from that 18 to 34 distribution up to between 35 and above. So it's not necessarily that the data of young people has reduced. No, we only have more people who are moving from being 18 to 34, moving to 35 and above. So the median age still consists of a lot of young people, and many of these young people are students, based on what this INEC statistics is showing. So students will hold the ace here, alongside business people and farmers. Now, a lot of rural communities have been affected by the issues of insecurity, by the issues of economy. And I will tell you that many of these people actually are the ones who have these kids that they have to send to school and all of that, who have been affected. A lot of people are unable to send their children to school. A lot of students were outside the school system because of the ASU strike. And so parents within the farming system and then the students who have that huge majority will play a critical role as to determine who will be the next president. Because look, they will think about how their kids have been outside school for a long period of time, and the students will also think of the problems that they've encountered, and this will drive them to decide who the next president will be.
Thank you so very much. No better place for you to drop the anchor there. Arise News Director and Political Editor Samna Sambo in our offsite studios, and NOB is the convener of the Situation Room and Country Director of Action Aid. Thanks both of you for joining us.